You know this moment. A boy climbs a tower. A man in golden armor turns from a window with a secret behind him, takes the boy by the arm, and says the cruelest, kind thing in the whole saga. The things I do for love. And then he lets go. Except here, he doesn't. Here the hand closes. Jaime Lannister pulls Bran Stark back in over the ledge, sets him on the stone, and by doing the one decent thing he has ever done, damns every living soul in Westeros. Because that boy never falls. So there is no assassin, no dagger, no war. House Stark is never broken. Ned Stark grows old in his own hall, warm, surrounded by every child he never had to bury. And the realm, saved from the war that would have hardened it, sleeps through the only warning it was ever going to get, until the dead come over an empty wall, 17 years too late for anyone to stop them. The night is dark and full of theories. What if Bran Stark never fell? This is the story of how saving one family cost the world the only thing that could have saved it. 4,000 likes and we make part 2. Discord's in the description. Let's begin. Act 1. The Hand That Closed. The thing about the first keep at Winterfell is that nobody uses it anymore, which is exactly why a 7-year-old loves it. It is the oldest part of the castle, half fallen down, its gargoyles worn to lumps, and the only living things that go up there are the crows in the broken tower and Bran Stark, who is not supposed to climb, but climbs anyway because he is 7 and he is good at it, and the whole world looks different from up where the ravens are. His mother has told him to stop 100 times. His father has told him. Old Nan has told him a story specifically designed to frighten him out of it, involving a boy who climbed too high and was taken by the things that live in the sky. And it did not work, because Bran worked out halfway through that old Nan had made it up on the spot. So on the morning the king's party rides out to hunt, and half of Winterfell empties out with them, Bran Stark goes up the side of the first keep, hand over hand, past the empty windows, toward the tower where the crows are. And at the second window from the top, he hears voices, which is wrong, because nobody comes up here but him. He climbs level with the window and looks in, because he is 7, and that is what 7 does. There are 2 people in that room, and they are the queen and her brother. And they are not behaving like a queen and her brother, and Bran does not understand most of what he is looking at, but he understands that it is a secret, and he makes a sound. Jaime Lannister moves faster than anything Bran has ever seen. One moment he is across the room, and the next he has Bran by the wrist, hauled half over the ledge, 100 feet of empty air under him, and the grip on his arm is the only thing between him and the ground.
How old are you, boy?
7.
And here's the second that the world turns on. Jaime Lannister looks down at 100 feet of nothing, and then at the boy dangling over it, and something crosses his face that even he could not name afterward. He thinks of a great many things very quickly. He thinks of his own children, who must never be called his. He thinks of what his father would tell him to do, and how simple it would be, and how it would look exactly like an accident. And then he thinks, he is 7.
Jaime.
No.
Jaime, he saw us. You know what that means. You know what it has to mean.
I said no, Cersei. I am not going to be a man who throws children out of windows. Not today. Not this one.
He pulls Bran back in over the ledge and sets him down on the stone floor of the tower room and crouches in front of him so their faces are level. And for a moment, the most beautiful and most dangerous man in the 7 kingdoms just looks at a small, frightened boy.
Now you listen to me, and you listen well, because your life is going to depend on how good you are at one particular thing. You are going to forget what you saw. Not pretend to forget. Forget. You are going to climb back down that wall, and you are going to go and find your brothers. And whatever is in your head right now, you are going to put in a box and drop the box down a well. Can you do that?
I don't even know what I saw.
That is the correct answer. Hold on to not knowing it. It is the most valuable thing you own.
Bran climbs back down. He is shaking so hard he nearly falls twice, which would have been a joke the gods would have appreciated, but he does not fall. And he reaches the bottom, and he runs. And in the tower above him, a brother and sister stand in a room that has just come very close to a murder, and do not look at each other.
He will tell. Children tell. He will tell his father inside a day, and then Robert will have all our heads, and it will have been for nothing, all of it, for years.
He won't tell.
You cannot know that.
I can, actually, because I have spent my entire life being the thing everyone whispers about and never says out loud, and I know exactly what a secret does to a person when they are too frightened to speak it. It doesn't come out. It goes down. That boy is going to spend the rest of his life not knowing what he saw, and it is going to keep him safer than any lie we could invent.
He is right. That is the terrible thing that this whole story is built on. Jaime Lannister is completely right. Bran Stark never tells a soul. Not that day, not that year, not ever. He does exactly what he was told. He takes the thing he saw, and he puts it in a box, and he drops the box down a well so deep that within a few months he genuinely cannot reach it, and within a few years he is not certain it was ever real, and by the time he is a grown man, he remembers only that he was frightened of the broken tower as a child and stopped climbing it, and cannot for the life of him say why. Bran finds his brothers in the yard, where Robb and Jon are shooting at the archery butts and losing to a 7-year-old's opinion of their form. He does not tell them. He wants to. The words come all the way up to his teeth, and then he thinks of the man's face and the 100 feet of air, and he swallows them back down, and the swallowing is the first of 10,000 times he will do it.
You look like you've seen a ghost. What were you doing up there?
Climbing.
Mother's going to skin you. And then she's going to skin me for not stopping you.
I won't climb the old tower again, I promise.
And that is the only true thing Bran says all day, and he keeps it his whole life, and neither of his brothers ever thinks to wonder why the one keep in the whole castle that Bran will not go near is the one he loved best. The king's party comes home from the hunt at dusk with a boar, 3 brace of birds, and a quantity of wine that Robert Baratheon has been steadily reducing since before noon. There is a feast in the great hall. Robert is enormous and loud and delighted, hurling a leg of something at a laughing Great John Umber across 4 tables. And Cersei Lannister sits at his side with a face like a painting of a smile. And next to her sits her brother, who does not eat much, and who spends a good deal of the evening watching a small, dark-haired boy at the far end of the hall pick at his food and say nothing. Bran does not look at him. That is what tells Jaime everything he needs to know. A boy who had forgotten would have stared at the Golden Knight all night, the way boys do. A boy who was not forgetting, on purpose, with everything he had, would look at his plate.
The younger Stark boy, the climber. He's quiet tonight.
He's a child. Children are quiet when they're tired. Stop looking at him.
I'm not looking at him. I'm looking at us, and hoping we were worth it.
Later, when the hall has mostly emptied and the dogs are fighting over what fell off the tables, Robert Baratheon puts his great arm around Ned Stark's shoulders and steers him toward the crypts with a torch, the way he does every time he comes north, to stand in front of a dead woman and be sad for a while.
It's good to be here, Ned, away from that pit. You've got a good life up here. Cold as a witch's tit and half the size of my privy, but good. Real. Your boys don't flinch when you look at them.
They flinch a little.
That's just respect. You should see mine. Joffrey looks at me like he's pricing my funeral. And I made him. That's the joke of it. I made all of it, and I don't recognize a single piece.
And they go down into the dark to visit Lyanna, and above them the feast dies down, and Bran Stark lies awake in his bed with a box in his head that he has already begun, without knowing the word for it, to bury. That is the point. Nothing happens. Nobody dies. That is the whole disaster, beginning very quietly, the way the worst ones always do. Act 2. The Hand Who Went Home. 9 days later, Robert Baratheon asks Eddard Stark to be the Hand of the King, And Eddard Stark says yes. Because in this story, exactly as in the one you know, Ned Stark is a man who cannot refuse a duty even when every instinct he has is screaming at him. And then the two things that were supposed to happen do not happen, and everything bends around the absence of them. In the history you know, Bran Stark falls, and while he lies broken and sleeping, a catspaw comes to cut his throat, and Catelyn Stark catches the blade with her bare hand and takes that blade south and shows it to Peter Baelish, who tells her a beautiful lie, that it belongs to Tyrion Lannister. And Catelyn Stark, on the strength of that lie, seizes Tyrion by pure chance at a crossroads inn and hauls him off to the Eyrie to answer for it. And that, one woman seizing one dwarf at one inn, is the pebble that starts the avalanche. Tywin Lannister sends his bannermen to burn the Riverlands in answer. Ned, seeking justice for the raids, moves against the Lannisters and loses his head for it. Robb calls his banners, 5 kings rise. The realm tears itself to pieces, and in the tearing, almost by accident, it arms itself. None of that happens here. There is no fall, so there is no cat's paw, so there is no dagger, so there is no lie, so there is no dwarf taken on the road, so there is no war. Instead, there is this. Eddard Stark rides south to be Hand, and he takes his daughters, and he leaves a whole and healthy family behind him in a castle in the north. And in King's Landing, he does his duty grimly and well, and he does eventually notice the same thing Jon Arryn noticed, that the king's children are gold, where every Baratheon for 300 years was black. But here is the difference, and it is everything. In the story you know, this discovery is the beginning of the end for Ned Stark. Here, it goes very differently, and the difference is the whole of the story. In this story, Ned Stark works it out more slowly, because nothing is driving him. In the tale you know, a knife at his son's bedside and a dagger and 100 small alarms all push him to dig fast and dig deep. Here, there is none of that. Only a slow, cold, private unease that takes years to sharpen into certainty. In his 5th year as Hand, he finally reads the same old book of lineages Jon Arryn was reading the week he died, and looks at 3 golden children and 300 years of black-haired Baratheons, and understands at last what his predecessor understood, and what it cost him. And then he carries it, alone, for the better part of a year, and does nothing with it, because he has learned the lesson that the other Ned Stark died for not knowing, that being right is not the same as being safe, and that a truth like this one is not a key, it is a lit torch in a room full of oil. And here is the thing that keeps him alive, the thing that, in the other story, he was never wise enough to do. He never breathes a word of it. Not to Robert, not to Cersei, not to Catelyn, not to a soul. He does not confront the queen, because he has understood, slowly, coldly, over that long year, exactly what the other Ned Stark never grasped in time, that Cersei Lannister does not have people killed for opposing her. She has them killed for knowing. The moment he lets her see that he knows, he is a dead man, and so are his daughters in the city with him, and so is the peace of the whole realm. So Ned Stark does the hardest thing a righteous man can do. He looks at the single most important truth in the 7 kingdoms, and he swallows it, and he tells nobody. And he takes his daughters and he goes home, before the knowing can leak out of him and get them all killed. In the story you know, Ned's honor made him warn Cersei, and it cost him his head and lit the whole realm on fire. Here his love makes him silent, and it saves his family, and it lets a sleeping realm sleep. The fire is never lit. That is the mercy. That is also, though no one will understand it for 17 years, the catastrophe. Robert is not on a hunt with a wineskin doctored by a frightened queen, because in this story, the queen is not frightened, because in this story, nobody found her out at knife point. Robert lives. Robert Baratheon, fat and disappointed and entirely alive, sits his throne for 8 more years. And Ned Stark, holding a truth he cannot prove and cannot use, a truth that would start exactly the war he most wants to avoid, does the thing that Ned Stark in the other story never got the chance to do. He goes home.
I am asking you to release me, Robert. Make Stannis your hand, or Tyrell, or whoever you like. I have served. I have given you 5 years. I want to grow old in my own hall, with my own family, and I want to die in a bed that does not smell of this city.
You're leaving me here? With them? Ned, you're the only man in this whole nest of vipers who doesn't want something from me.
I want one thing. I want to go home.
Then go. Gods, go before I remember I'm a king and forbid it. Go and be happy, you cold northern bastard. One of us should be.
He never tells Robert what he knows. He decides, on the long ride north, that he will take it to his grave, that the cost of speaking it is a war, and the cost of keeping it is only his own peace, and that this is a bargain he can live with. He is wrong about the cost. He has the arithmetic exactly backwards, but he will not find that out for 17 years. Act 3. The Golden Years. Here is the part of this story that is going to hurt later, so enjoy it now, because everyone in it does. The Starks are whole. Robb Stark grows into the lord his father always was, and better, because he never has to become it in a war. He learns it slowly, at Ned's elbow, the way it is supposed to be learned. He marries a Frey girl. Old Walder Frey spent his whole life angling to marry a daughter into a great house, and in a realm at peace, with Robb a lord and not a rebel king who broke a betrothal, that marriage is simply a good match instead of a death sentence. And Robb does not love her at first, and then rather does, which is the best kind. Sansa comes home from King's Landing having seen exactly enough of the southern court to be cured of wanting it, which is a thing that, in the other story, cost her everything to learn, and here cost her a single unhappy year and a betrothal to Joffrey that Ned quietly dissolves the moment they are back behind northern walls. Arya is Arya. Arya cannot be improved by peace, and is not much slowed by it either. She learns her needlework badly and her water dancing secretly from a Braavosi that Ned pretends very hard not to know he has hired, and she grows up wild and whole and infuriating and alive. Bran climbs. Of course Bran climbs. He climbs everything in the castle except the first keep, which he avoids without ever being able to say why. And he grows up strong and quick and dreaming, always dreaming of a three-eyed crow that comes to him at night and that he never mentions to anybody because it sounds mad. And Rickon grows up not feral the way he was in the other story, but simply young, the baby of a large, happy family, indulged and loud and fine. Jon Snow takes the black, because Jon Snow was always going to take the black, but he does it in a realm at peace, and that turns out to matter enormously, in the worst possible way, and we will come back to it. The years are good. Robert visits twice and drinks Winterfell dry both times, and weeps in the crypt and goes home. Tyrion Lannister, who in this story never rides north with a dwarf saddle for a crippled boy because there is no crippled boy, comes anyway, years later, on his own account, because he has heard the Maester's library at Winterfell holds books that burned out of every southern copy an age ago, and that the North brews the best ale north of the neck, and he arrives expecting to be turned away at the gate, and is instead handed a cup by Ned Stark himself.
I confess, I expected a colder welcome. Your reputation, Lord Stark, is that you do not much care for my family.
I do not. You are not much like your family.
That is the kindest thing anyone has said to me in a decade, and I have been paying people to be kind to me for most of it.
He comes back almost every year after that. It becomes a joke in the castle, the imp's annual pilgrimage to the only hall in Westeros where nobody wants anything from him. He teaches Bran Syvas, and loses on purpose until Bran gets good enough that he stops having to. He sits up late with Ned, and they do not become friends exactly, but they become something. Two clever, unhappy, honest men in a warm room. And it is one of the good things, and there are a lot of good things in these years. The friendship with Arya is the one nobody expects and everybody enjoys, and it is built from the first day entirely on the exchange of insult.
You hold that sword like you mean it. Who taught you? And do not say your septa. I have met your septa.
Nobody taught me. Ladies don't learn swords.
And bears don't dance, and yet, I am the last man in this castle who will tell your father anything, my lady. I have made an entire life out of the things people wish they hadn't shown me. Keep your secret, but shift your back foot. You're about to fall over.
There is the matter of Robb's wedding, which, in the story you know, is the single most infamous night in the history of the Seven Kingdoms, and here is simply a wedding. The marriage pact with House Frey, the broken version of which, in the other telling, got Robb and his mother butchered under a Frey roof over bread and salt, is here just a wedding, arranged between Robb Stark and one of Walder Frey's endless daughters, a shy girl named Roslyn, who arrives at Winterfell braced to be despised, and is instead, slowly, over a first hard year and then an easier one, loved.
I did not choose you. I want to be honest about that, because you'll hear it from someone, and I'd rather it was me. My father made an arrangement, and I kept it, because that is what we do.
I know. I did not choose you either, my lord. I was the daughter my father could most easily spare.
Then we're two people who were spent like coin. That's not the worst thing to have in common. We could try to make something out of it. I'd like to try.
And they do. And it works. The way these things sometimes quietly do. And there is a fat, laughing baby by the 3rd year, and another by the 5th. And Ned Stark holds his grandchildren by the fire, and thinks he is the luckiest man in the North. And he is right. And that is exactly the problem. Sansa, cured of the South, becomes the lady the North actually needs, the one who remembers every name, every grievance, every marriage and feud among the mountain clans, the one Robb learns to consult before he answers any lord's letter.
You memorize which lord hates which lord, on purpose, for fun.
I memorize which lord hates which lord, so that when you insult one of them at a feast, which you will, I know how much damage you've done, which you never do. You're welcome, by the way. Repeated.
It is a good life. That is the trap. And it is worth saying twice, because the whole weight of the ending rests on how much you believe in this middle. Everything these people were denied in the story you know, they are given here. Ned grows old. Catelyn is not murdered at a wedding. She frets over her grandchildren and rules the household with an iron gentleness, and dies, eventually, years from now, in a bed of age, which is the rarest death a Stark is ever granted, and here it is simply ordinary. This is the trap. You understand that, watching it. Everything you ever wanted for these people, they get. The family that the story you know put through a meat grinder, here they sit by a fire and grow old and love each other. There is one moment in the middle of the good years that will make you want to shout at the screen, and it is a small one, which is why it lands. Robert visits for the 2nd time, in the 6th year, and one drunken night by the fire, the talk turns, the way it does among old men, to the state of the realm, and Benjen Stark's name comes up. Benjen, first Ranger of the Watch, who took the Black long before any of this, and who still writes his brother twice a year, and whose letters have lately taken on a note that Ned cannot quite place. Fewer rangings returning, more men lost beyond the wall, and no bodies found.
Your brother's watch is a joke, Ned, and I say it with love. 600 men? When I was a boy, the watch was 10,000 strong. Now it's what, a workhouse for poachers? Somebody ought to do something about that wall before it falls down out of sheer neglect.
Benjen says the same. He's been asking for men for years. I keep meaning to send a few. There's always something. The harvest, the mountain clans, a wedding.
Everything slips in a good year. That's what a good year is. Well, send 'em 100 men when the mood takes you and feel virtuous about it. Wildlings I'll grant you. They're always coming over in 1s and 2s to steal a sheep. But the thing the wall was actually built for? Nobody's seen that in 8,000 years.
If it was ever real at all.
If it was ever real at all. There you are. Drink.
And they drink. Two men who love each other, in a warm hall, in a good year, and the single subject that could have saved the world is raised and dismissed in the space of a cup of wine, because that is what a good year is. It slips. Everything slips in a good year, and every winter the ravens come from the wall, asking for men, and every winter there are fewer men to ask for, and every winter, in a realm at peace with no war to make anyone afraid, those ravens go into the fire unread. Act 4. The Crow, Bran. This act belongs to Bran, because Bran is the only person in the Seven Kingdoms who can feel it coming, and he cannot tell anybody because he does not have the words, and because the words he does have sound like madness. The first time is when he is 8, a year after the tower, and he wakes the whole household screaming, and when Catelyn holds him and asks what he saw, he cannot say, because what he saw does not fit in a child's mouth.
It was only a dream, sweetling. Dreams can't cross the threshold. You're home. You're warm. You're safe. Tell me what you saw, and it will lose its power. That's how it works with dreams.
There was a man made of ice. He was on a dead horse, and he looked at me, Mother. Not at somebody near me, at me. He knew my name, and he doesn't have a mouth.
That's a very frightening dream. But it is a dream, and now it's over. And in the morning, it will seem small. Everything frightening seems small in the morning.
She is wrong, and she is being the best mother in the world while she is wrong, which is the whole tragedy of it in miniature. There is no comfort a loving parent can give that is not, in this one specific case, a door being gently closed on the only warning the world will get. The dreams start when he is small and get worse as he grows. There is a three-eyed crow. It comes to him at night, and it does not speak so much as pull, northward, always northward, past the wall, into a cold that is somehow also a kind of seeing. In the dreams, Bran is not in his bed. He is 100 feet up a weirwood that has a face, and the face is looking at him, and below him the snow goes on forever, and there are blue lights moving in it. He is 19 the first time he understands that the blue lights are eyes.
I need to tell you something, and I need you to not tell me I'm dreaming.
All right.
Something is wrong in the north. Not the north the way we mean it, past the wall, past everything. I've been seeing it my whole life, and I thought it was a story I made up when I was small, but it isn't, Father. It's getting closer, and it's getting bigger, and nobody is looking at it because everybody is looking at us being happy.
Ned Stark is quiet for a long moment. He is not a man who believes in dreams, but he is a man who remembers his own father's bannermen talking, when he was a boy, about things the Watch used to be for, back before the Watch became a dumping ground for thieves.
The wall is very tall, Bran. It has stood 8,000 years. Whatever is out there, it has been out there the whole time, and the wall has held.
The wall was built by men who were afraid of something. We stopped being afraid. I don't think the thing on the other side stopped being anything.
He cannot make his father believe him. Not really. Not enough. Ned Stark loves his son and worries for him, and quietly asks Maester Luwin whether a young man can be given to strange dreams the way another might be given to drink, and Luwin says yes, and prescribes fresh air and less reading, and that is the end of it. But Bran keeps the splinter in his father, small and lodged and working. And he does one thing more, because he cannot help it. He starts writing the dreams down. Every one. A private book, kept in a locked chest, the better part of his life poured into it, in a hand that starts as a child's and grows into a man's. All of it saying the same thing in 100 different ways. Something is coming. It is old. It is patient. It is past the wall, and the wall is not what we think it is. The dreams sharpen as he grows. He learns, without anyone to teach him, that he can sometimes be inside the castle's old blind dog, or the ravens in the rookery, or, once, terrifyingly, for a single held breath, a direwolf on a hill he has never seen, looking down at an army that is not made of the living. And then there is the crow. The three-eyed crow is not a dream, or not only a dream. It has a voice when it chooses, dry as old paper, and it has been coming to Bran since before he can remember, and it wants exactly one thing.
What are you? Really? Not the riddles, just tell me.
The crow, in the dream, on its branch of weirwood, tilts its head.
I am what is left of the last man who could see the way you see. I have been waiting a very long time for another. There has not been one among your kind in longer than your maesters keep count, because they stopped believing there was anything worth seeing. You are the first eyes to open in a very long age, Bran Stark, and you have opened them at exactly the wrong moment, or the only one that matters, which are sometimes the same thing.
Then help me. Tell me how to stop it.
I cannot tell you how to stop it. I can only show you that it is real, and hope you can make the warm people believe you before the cold ones arrive. That is all seeing has ever been able to do. It is less than you want. It is more than nothing.
And that splinter of unease in Ned Stark and that locked book of a lifetime of dreams are going to matter at the very end. Far too late to save everything, but perhaps, not too late to save something. And Bran keeps dreaming, and in the dreams, the three-eyed crow shows him things. A ranging that went out from the wall and did not come back. A holdfast beyond the wall, standing empty, its people simply gone. No blood, no bodies, just gone. And a figure on a dead horse, with a crown of ice, who turns, slowly, in Bran's dream, and looks directly at him, which is not supposed to be possible. It says nothing. It has no voice. But it sees him. The boy dreaming in a warm bed the length of the north away, and it marks him, and Bran wakes with frost on the inside of his window in a room with a fire lit. We will come back to what is behind those eyes. First, the one place in the Seven Kingdoms that was built for exactly this, and the 600 men who are all that is left to hold it. Now, back to it. Act 5. The Wall with no one on it. Jon Snow is the 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and he commands a garrison that would have shamed the Watch of 300 years ago. 600 men. That is what is left. 600 men to hold 300 miles of wall and 19 castles, of which they can garrison exactly 3. In a realm at peace, nobody is sent to the wall, because the wall is where you send the losers of wars, and there have been no wars. The dungeons that once fed the Watch its rapists and poachers and broken men are half empty, because a realm at peace hangs its criminals at home instead of shipping them north. Peace emptied the wall. That is the sentence this entire video is built to deliver. The thing that was supposed to protect the world was fed for 300 years entirely by the world's suffering, and when the suffering stopped, the shield starved. You can see it in the daily life of Castle Black, which Jon Snow runs less like a garrison and more like a man tending a fire he knows is going out. There are 3 cooks, and one of them is 80. There are more ravens than men to send them. Whole wings of the castle have been closed and stripped for firewood. When a brother dies, of age, of cold, of the small accidents that kill men in hard places, he is not replaced, because there is no one to replace him with, and the number on the muster rolls only ever goes down. Maester. Old Maester Aemon, sir.
Old Maester Aemon served this watch for 100 years, and died at his post 2 winters past, Lord Commander, and I was his steward for the last 30 of them. I have watched this watch shrink my whole life, the way a man watches his own hands grow old. So slowly you never catch it moving. But I never thought I would live to see it too small to matter. That is a new thing, and I am not a young man, and I did not think there were new things left for me.
How many would we need to hold it properly, to do what the watch was built to do?
10,000, perhaps more, to man the castles the way they were meant to be manned. You have...
Then tell me what 600 can do.
600 can send letters, and 600 can choose, when the time comes, not to run. It is not much. History is sometimes made of not much. wielded by the right hands at the last hour. Send your letters, Jon Snow, and sharpen your glass.
And the wildlings come. That is the part that finally makes it undeniable if anyone south had cared to look. They come to the gate not as raiders, but as refugees, in their hundreds and then their thousands, families, old women, children with frostbitten feet, the whole free folk pouring toward the one gate in 300 miles of ice, begging to be let through to the south they have spent 8,000 years being kept out of.
You know what it takes to make the free folk walk toward a wall full of crows with their hands open. You know what's behind us, that makes 600 of you look like shelter. We don't come to you, Crow, not ever. And here we are, on our knees, at your gate. Open it. For the love of whatever you kneel to, open it, because everything we're running from is going to be here by the turn of the moon, and you want us on your side of the ice when it comes, alive, and not on the other side, dead, walking, and pointed at you.
Jon Snow opens the gate. It is the same choice that, in the story you know, got a version of him murdered by his own men. But here there are no old hatreds left with any heat in them. No brothers who lost fathers and sons to wildling raids within living memory, because the raids stopped a generation ago, and the men who remembered them are dead. Peace took even that from him. It took away the reasons to refuse, and so he does the wise thing and the doomed thing at once, and lets 100,000 living souls through the wall, and it is not nearly enough, and it is the best decision anyone makes in this entire story. Jon Snow has one advantage the Watch of the Songs never had, and it is the same advantage that damns him: time. Nothing happens on his wall. No wars send him men, but no wars take his attention either. And so he does the thing a bored, clever, frightened commander does. He ranges. He goes over the wall himself, again and again, further each year. And he sees. He sees a wildling village standing empty, hearths cold, doors open, meat still hanging in the smokehouse, and every soul in it simply gone. No blood, no struggle, footprints leading north into the snow, and none coming back. He meets Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, not across a battlefield, but across a fire, because in this story, neither of them can afford the other as an enemy.
You're the first crow in longer than the songs remember to come over that wall to talk, instead of to kill. Why?
Because you've stopped raiding us. 10 years, no raids worth the name. A man who's raided the Watch his whole life doesn't just stop. Something changed. I want to know what.
You know what. You've seen the empty villages, or you wouldn't be sitting at my fire with your sword still in its sheath. My people aren't raiding you because my people are running, Jon Snow. And there is only one thing in this world that puts the free folk to flight. And your wall was built to keep it out, and there are 600 of you on it. 600, I have counted. Do you understand what you are asking me to run toward when you tell me to come south?
I'm asking you to bring your people through the gate. All of them. Because 100,000 living wildlings behind the wall are 100,000 fighters. And 100,000 dead ones are an army for the other side.
They make the pact that the Watch of the Songs could never make, wildling and crow. Because the peace that starved the wall has also, in its way, freed Jon Snow from the old hatreds that had nothing left to feed them. But a pact is not men, and it is not swords, and it is not a wall that can be held. And Jon Snow knows, riding back south through the gate, with a promise and no army, that a promise will not stop what is coming. So he writes letters. He is good at it. He has nothing but time. He writes to the Iron Throne, to Winterfell, to the Eyrie, to Casterly Rock, to Highgarden, and he tells them, in increasingly plain language, that the free folk beyond the wall have stopped raiding and started fleeing, that whole clans are coming to his gate begging to be let through, that men who have hated each other for 1,000 years are running south together from something they will not name. The letters go out. In a realm at peace, with no war to sharpen anyone's fear, the letters are read by bored maesters and filed and forgotten, because a starving watch crying wolf is the oldest story in Westeros, and nobody has seen a wolf in living memory. Only 2 people in the whole of the 7 kingdoms in a position to do anything take Jon Snow's letters seriously. One of them is his brother Bran, who has been dreaming the same thing Jon is writing, and who takes every letter to their father the moment it arrives. And the other, improbably, is Jaime Lannister. Because Jaime Lannister has spent 17 years thinking about the boy he did not throw out of a window. It changed him. Not into a good man, he would be the first to tell you, but into a man who once chose not to do the simple monstrous thing, and who has never entirely stopped wondering what else he might be capable of not doing. When Jon Snow's letters reach King's Landing and everyone laughs, Jaime does not laugh. He has met exactly one person who saw a truth nobody wanted to see and kept climbing anyway, and it made him spare a child, and he has learned to pay attention to that particular feeling.
You should read the ones from the wall.
The wall is a heap of ice full of criminals, and it has always been begging for something. Men, gold, grain. Now it wants us afraid of ghosts.
The new Lord Commander is a Stark, Ned Stark's bastard, and I have never once known a Stark to lie, which is their single most irritating quality, and it is exactly why I believe him.
Cersei does not listen. Cersei has 3 living children and a throne and everything she schemed for, because in this story her secret was never exposed, and a woman who has won does not go looking for new catastrophes. The small council is worse. Bran's letters, Jon's letters, the reports of refugees at the wall, all of it lands on a table of men who have grown comfortable in a long peace, and comfortable men are the hardest audience in the world for a prophecy.
The Watch has petitioned the throne for additional men in each of the last 9 years, Your Grace, and for grain in 7 of them, and for gold in all 9. It is what the Watch does. It is, one might say, the whole of what the Watch now does.
And the refugees? The thousands of wildlings at the gate? The Grand Maester's own order confirms the numbers.
Wildlings have always pressed south in a hard winter, my lord. It is the nature of winter and the nature of wildlings.
In such numbers that they'll take the black just to get through the gate? Mortal enemies of the Watch, begging to join it? When has that ever happened? In 8,000 years.
And the table looks at Jaime Lannister with the particular blank patience of powerful men, waiting for a soldier to finish talking so the clever people can resume, and the matter is tabled, and tabled again, and tabled until there is no more table. Because here's the thing about Jaime Lannister in this story. He has spent 17 years as a slightly different man than the one you know, and the difference is a single afternoon in a tower. He did not throw a boy out of a window. It sounds like nothing. It changed everything in him, slowly, the way water changes stone. A man who has done the simple, monstrous thing his whole life, and then once, for no reason he can defend, does not. That man spends the rest of his life wondering what else he might be strong enough to refuse. It made him listen. It made him, of all the people at that table, the one who could hear a Stark saying the sky was falling and think, I have known exactly one boy who saw a thing nobody wanted to see, and I have spent 17 years glad I believed him.
You'll remember, all of you, that I said this. When it comes, and it is coming, you will remember that the Kingslayer of all people sat at this table and told you the truth, and you laughed, because it came out of the wrong mouth.
But Jaime keeps the letters. He reads every one. He rides to the wall himself, once, in the 15th year, against the Queen's wishes and his own better judgment, and he stands on top of 300 miles of ice, with 600 men strung along it like beads on a mile of thread, and he looks north into a white nothing that looks back, and he goes home quieter than he came.
You've been strange since you came back from that frozen heap. What did you see up there?
Nothing. That's what frightened me. 300 miles of wall and 600 men, and on the other side of it, nothing at all, as far as I could see, waiting very patiently for us to keep on doing nothing back.
And when the last letter comes, the one that is not a request for men, but a report of the wall being climbed, Jaime Lannister is the only person in the Red Keep who is not surprised. There is a third who believes, and he can do nothing, and it eats him alive. Tyrion Lannister has spent nearly 2 decades riding north every year to sit in the one hall that never wanted anything from him, and he knows the Starks, and he knows Bran Stark is not a madman, and he knows that when a clever family with no history of hysteria all begin saying the same frightening thing, the correct response is not to laugh.
I've read every letter that boy at the wall has sent. I've played Savas with his brother, the Dreamer, for years, and I'll tell you what the Dreamer is. He's the sanest man in that castle, which, in that castle, is saying something. If the Starks are frightened, I am frightened, because I have never in my life met people less inclined to invent a monster.
You're frightened because you're drunk, and you've grown sentimental about the North like an old man about a childhood summer. There is no army of the dead, brother. There is a starving wall and a hard winter and a family of humorless northern fanatics who have finally found a ghost story grand enough to match their opinion of themselves.
I hope you're right. I have never hoped so hard that you were right about anything. But I'm going north, Cersei, and if it isn't nothing, then somebody in this family should be able to say, afterward, that at least one Lannister believed them.
He rides north in the 17th year, and he is at Winterfell, a guest as he has been a guest a dozen times, when the last letter comes, which means that Tyrion Lannister, of all people, is inside the walls of Winterfell when the world ends, on the wrong side of a frozen continent from his own family, exactly where he always secretly wanted to be, and for the worst reason imaginable. Act 6, The Winter That Came. It comes the way Bran always dreamed it would, which is to say, silently, and from the north, and far too fast. The last night of the old world at Castle Black begins with a horn, one blast for a returning ranger. Then, after a pause that every man on the wall will remember for the rest of his short life, a second blast for wildlings. And then, when the horn should have stopped, a third, long and shaking, from a man who did not believe he would ever have cause to blow it, for the others. 3 blasts have not sounded from the wall in 8,000 years. Most of the 600 men of the watch have been taught what 3 blasts mean the way children are taught the words of a prayer in a language nobody speaks anymore, by rote, without belief. Jon Snow is on top of the wall in the dark within minutes, and what he sees from 700 feet is not an army, because an army has torches and campfires and noise. What he sees is a darkness moving over the snow. And where it moves, the white goes gray, and then black, and it makes no sound at all. And it does not stop at the base of the wall, the way a living enemy would, to plan, to build, to wait for dawn. It begins immediately, and without any apparent difficulty, to climb.
My lord, what do we do? The books, what do the books say to do?
The books were written by men who had 19 castles manned and 100,000 swords, and they still barely held. There's nothing in the books for 600. Get every man to Castle Black, not the other castles. They're already gone. They just don't know it. Everyone here, now.
He does the only thing there is to do, which is pull his pitiful garrison in tight and hold one castle and send every raven he has left screaming south. He holds Castle Black for 3 days. Men who have never seen battle learn, in the dark. With Dragonglass, Jon has spent years quietly digging out of the old caches beyond the wall, on the strength of his brother's dreams and his own, that the dead can be stopped, that a shard of black glass does what steel cannot. And for 3 days, the oldest brotherhood in the world remembers, briefly, savagely, what it was for. But there are 600 of them, and beyond the wall there is no number at all. And the wall does not fall in this story. It does not have to. 600 men cannot hold 300 miles, and the dead do not need a gate. They need only a stretch of ice with nobody standing on it. And there are 300 miles of exactly that. While Jon Snow holds Castle Black, they come over the top 40 miles east, in the dark, at a stretch of wall between 2 abandoned castles, where the nearest living watchman is a corpse who has not yet been told. By the time Jon Snow knows they are through, they are behind him. And this time, the letters that go south are believed, because this time, they do not arrive alone. They arrive alongside refugees, Thousands of them, northern small folk from the gift, running ahead of a cold that kills everything it touches. And a lie is easy to file and forget, but 10,000 frightened farmers at your gate are not. At Winterfell, Ned Stark reads a letter from his son at the wall, and then he reads a second letter, and the second one is from Bran, who is upstairs, and who has written down, finally, plainly, everything the three-eyed crow has shown him for 17 years. And Ned Stark, who has spent 17 years being quietly proud that he avoided a war, understands all at once, standing in his solar with 2 letters in his hand, exactly what his peace has cost.
I sent no men to the wall. 17 years. Every winter it asked, and every winter I had other things to think about, because we were happy, and happy men do not send their sons to freeze on a wall for a threat nobody has seen in an age. I did this. Not by anything I did, by everything I did not.
He calls the banners. Of course he calls the banners. He is Ned Stark, and there is a threat, and calling the banners is what the North does. But calling the banners in this story is not what it was in the other one. In the story you know, the North had spent a year at war. Its lords were bloodied and battle-ready and mobilized. Here they are 17 years soft. The muster is slow. The armories are half empty because nobody reforges swords in a long peace. The men are farmers who have never seen a battle, led by lords who inherited their seats instead of winning them. You can see it in one scene if you want to understand what 17 soft years did. When Ned Stark calls his banners, the great Jon Umber, who in the story you know was a wall of a man, a veteran of a hard campaign, the first to name Robb a king, is here an old lord who has not swung an axe in anger in 2 decades, and whose son, the young Great Jon, has never swung one at all.
How many men can you bring me, and how many of them have ever seen a battle?
I can bring you 2,000, Lord Stark. Farmers, most of them. Good lads, strong. And how many have seen a battle? Well, there's me. There's a few graybeards who remember the Greyjoy business. The rest have seen a tavern brawl and a hard harvest, and that's the whole of their war.
Then we will have to make soldiers of them on the march.
You make soldiers of farmers with time, my lord. And time's the one thing your ravens tell me we haven't got. In the old days, gods forgive me for saying it, in the old days we'd have been ready. There was always a war brewing somewhere to keep a man's edge on. 20 years of plenty, and we've gone to fat and forgotten what the cold is for.
He does not know how right he is. Nobody in that hall does. But the young men buckling on their grandfather's armor in the yard below, armor that has hung on a wall since before they were born, are about to learn what the cold is for. And they are going to learn it far too fast. Peace did to the North exactly what it did to the wall. It let the muscle waste. And this is the cruelty at the center of this entire story, the thing that makes it worth an hour and a half of your life. The war that tore the 7 kingdoms apart. In the history you know. The war we all wished had never happened. The war that killed Ned and Robb and Catelyn and so many others. That war was the only thing that ever put a sharpened realm on a war footing in time. It was a catastrophe. It was also, by pure accident, a drill. It armed the North. It hardened the riverlands. It filled the wall's cells with prisoners and taught an entire generation of lords how to fight and die. Take the war away, and you take away the only preparation the world ever accidentally made. Act 7, The Letter at the Hearth. We end where we should end, which is quietly, at a fireside, with an old man and a piece of paper. Eddard Stark is 58 years old. He is alive, which in the story you know he had not been for 17 years. He is warm. He is at his own hearth in his own hall with his own family under his own roof, every one of them living. Robb and his wife and their children, Sansa, Arya home from wherever Arya goes, Rickon grown, Bran by the fire with the far-off look he has had his whole life. It is everything Ned Stark ever wanted. It is the exact life he chose on a road south 17 years ago when he decided that his family's happiness was worth more than a war. And in his hand is a letter from Jon Snow, carried south by a half-dead ranger who died in the yard an hour after he handed it over. And the letter is 4 lines long, and it says that the wall is behind them now, that the dead are coming down the King's Road, that Eastwatch is gone and the Shadow Tower is silent, that he does not know how many of them there are, but that from the top of what is left of the wall, at night, the lights of them go all the way to the horizon. Look at the room before he opens it. This is the image the whole 90 minutes has been building toward, and it is not a battle. It is a family. Robb is there, past 30 now, the first gray coming into the auburn, his 2 children asleep against his wife's side. Sansa is there, who is going to be sold to a monster in another life, and is here simply a woman by her father's fire. Arya is there, home from one of her long unexplained absences, sharpening something, because Arya is always sharpening something. Rickon is there, grown, loud, whole. Catelyn is not. She died 2 years ago, old, in a bed, mourned, which is the gentlest thing this story does for anyone. And Bran is there, by the fire, with the look he has had since he was 7, the look of a man listening to something on the far side of a wall. Every Stark that the story you know fed into the dark, alive, in one warm room. This is what a hand closing instead of opening bought. It is worth everything. That is what makes it unbearable. Ned Stark reads the 4 lines by the fire, with his whole living family around him, and he understands the thing this entire story has been walking toward. The best thing that ever happened to House Stark is the thing that doomed the world. Because a boy did not fall. Because a hand closed instead of opening. Because there was no dagger, and no lie, and no dwarf on a road, and no war. Because these people he loves got to grow up whole and happy and safe. The world went to sleep. And a sleeping world does not sharpen its swords, or fill its wall, or believe its watchmen, or fear the dark.
You couldn't have known.
That is what men say to each other when they mean the opposite. I could have known. My son wrote it to me for 17 years, and I called it a dream because the truth would have cost me this, all of this. And I wanted this more than I wanted to be right.
And Bran, by the fire, closes his eyes, and the crow is there, as it has been there his whole life, and for the first time it does not pull him north. It simply sits with him, the way you sit with someone at the end of a long argument you have both lost.
You saw it. You saw all of it. For 17 years. You told them, in every way a boy can tell. Remember that, whatever comes. You were not the one who closed your eyes.
It didn't matter. Seeing it. None of it mattered. They were happy, so they couldn't hear me.
It mattered that someone saw. It always matters that someone saw. It is simply not the same as being saved. Those were never the same thing. And the cruelest lie your kind tells itself is that they are. Open your eyes now, Brandon Stark. Your family is going to need the one man among them who was never once surprised.
He opens his eyes.
Then we do it now. We do what we can with the time that's left.
Yes, we do. Get your brother. Get every man in the north who can hold a spear, ready or not, and send a raven to King's Landing, to the Queen, to whoever will read it. Tell them the thing at the wall is real, and it is past the wall, and it is coming, and we are not ready, and it is my fault that we are not ready, and none of that matters now.
He stands up from his chair by the fire, an old man in a warm hall full of the family he chose over the world, and he goes to do what he can, 17 years too late, with an army that never had to learn to fight. What follows is not the end. The end is part 2. But it is the beginning of the end, and it happens fast. The North does what the North has always done. It gathers at Winterfell, lords and levies streaming in through the first hard snow, and for a few days there is even something like the old defiance in the yard, banners and boasts, and young men who have never bled certain that they are about to become legends. Ned Stark stands in his solar with his sons and his bannermen and does the grim arithmetic out loud, because he has never been a man to lie to people about the size of a thing.
20,000, if every hall answers, and not all of them will in time. Perhaps a third have held a spear before this month. We have dragon glass. My son at the wall has been sending it south by the wagon load for 2 years from the old caches the free folk dug up beyond the ice, and I had the sense at least to believe him and stockpile it instead of laughing. It is being made into spearheads and arrowheads in every forge in the north as we speak. That is the one thing we did right, and it is nothing like enough.
Then we hold Winterfell, warm walls, deep wells, dragon glass, and stone that stood 8,000 years. We make them come to us.
They will. That's the part nobody wants to hear. They don't besiege, they don't starve you out or wait for terms. Everyone who dies inside these walls, of a wound, of the cold, of old age, everyone who dies gets up again on their side. A siege only helps them. The longer we hold, the bigger their army gets, and we make it out of our own dead.
The room goes very quiet, because a lifelong mad dreamer has just said the one thing none of the veterans thought of, and every man in it understands at once that it is true. The first battle in the north is at a place called Long Lake, where the young great Jon Umber takes 4,000 men to hold the eastern approach and buy the muster time. Exactly the sort of bold, doomed, glorious thing the North was famous for in the war you know. In the war you know, the North was an army of veterans, and it won every battle it fought. Here, 4,000 farmers with 2 months' training meet something that does not feel fear, and does not break, and does not stop when it should be dead. And they learn the difference between a war against men and a war against the cold. And the lesson costs all 4,000 of them. And by dawn, the young great Jon Umber, who died holding that line, is walking toward Winterfell at the head of the very men he led out, because everyone who fell at Long Lake got up again, wearing frost for eyes. Bran was right. That is the horror of the whole last act. Every single thing the boy dreamed for 17 years was right, and being right saves no one, because seeing a thing is not the same as being ready for it, and the world had 17 years to get ready, and spent them being happy instead. The raven that goes south from Winterfell to King's Landing is red, this time because it arrives in a week when the maesters of the Citadel have finally, formally, and far too late, declared that winter has come. The longest night in living memory, they say, and getting longer. It lands on the small council table in front of a queen who does not believe it, and a kingslayer who has believed it for 17 years.
It's Stark hysteria. It's always been Stark hysteria. I will not empty the capital's garrison and march it 1,000 miles into the snow on the word of a family that has been dreaming of monsters since before I was born.
Then don't. Stay. Hold the Red Keep. Hold your son on his throne. Hold everything you spent your life taking. I'm going north.
You're going to die in the snow for the Starks. After everything. After all of it, you're going to leave me for them.
I'm going to die in the snow for a boy I didn't throw out of a window 17 years ago, because it's the one thing I ever did that I'm certain was right, and I would like the last thing I do to match it. You can come, or you can stay here and rule the ashes. But it's real, Cersei. It was always real. I stood on that wall, and I felt it looking back.
He takes what men will follow him, not many, a few hundred, the ones who have served under him long enough to believe him against all the evidence of a comfortable city, and he rides north into a winter that is closing every road behind him as he goes. He will not arrive in time to change the outcome, but he will arrive, which is more than the throne he served ever managed, and there is something in that, and part 2 will make something of it. Outside, the snow has started, and it is not stopping, and somewhere to the north a figure on a dead horse with a crown of ice rides at the head of a column that has no end, toward a realm that spent 17 good years forgetting how to be afraid. The war that tore the Seven Kingdoms apart was the only thing that ever made them arm, and in this world, mercifully, kindly, lovingly, it never came. That's our theory. Did Jaime Lannister save an innocent boy, or did he doom every living soul in Westeros by refusing to be a monster for one single afternoon? Sometimes the cruelest thing a story can do is give everyone exactly what they wanted. If this gets 4,000 likes, we will make part 2, The Long Night That Won. Tell us in the comments, would you trade the Stark family's happiness for the world's only warning? Until then, remember, the night is dark and winter came